It's the CalebDMTG Show.
All right. Yeah, we can begin. This is a MTG Ambassador sponsored bit of content here. Wizard sent me some product, and yeah, this bit is for them. This is a constructed set review. Expected to last about 2 hours, give or take, right? Nothing too specific. If you miss any of it, it will be going up onto the YouTube, and yeah. So if you have to cut out a little early, or other people that are coming in later and won't see me mentioning this right now, it'll all be up on the YouTube. It'll all be available there. Anyway, starting up, this is probably going to be the most played out of all of the cards. This one's going to see the most play in Modern, and it's a little silly that it is functionally an Undying Evil reprint. That said, the upgrade here, when this aura is put into a graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. A damage is relevant, you know? Like, it's not the difference between like shock and lightning bolt here, but a damage is very relevant, especially in Modern. Everyone's taking damage from their mana base. And the deck that's gonna play this Not Dead After All, the Scam deck, is very aggressive. So yeah, I mean, Undying Malice, Feigned Death. Your time has come! We've had enough of ye! Get out of here! The first person to die because of the roll is gonna be very salty. I've got the roll right here, in case people are curious. Rolls are in aura, enchanted creature. This one gives +1/+1, and then when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. It's not relevant with this card. It's not relevant with Not Dead After All, but note that you can only have 1 roll on a creature. So if you had another way to put a roll on a creature that had a Wicked, then the Wicked would go to the graveyard, and the opponent would lose a life. That can come up. Now we have to have Wicked tokens in our box. Yeah, but it's worth it. It's worth it. I think Scam players should be excited, because they will occasionally get a kill from the extra point of damage off of this. Anyway, we all know how this red-black evoke deck works. We all get it. We all get the buff. We can move on. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this one. Could this see play in a deck that wants auras? Are you talking about like in Pioneer? Like in Pioneer, red-white, or I'm sorry, white-black auras is an archetype. I think those decks are still going to want Apostle's Blessing type effects that give protection, because you don't want to have to reset your whole creature, right? So like if the creature dies, you lose all the other auras. So it's cool that it gains this aura, right? It's cool that it gains Wicked. That's like a cool synergy that you're pointing out. But I don't think it's worth losing all of the other ones, right? When there's other protection spells that, you know, get to keep all the other ones, the invested cards into and such. It's a cool idea on your part, though. We can move on. Boop, boop, boop. Hearth Elemental. So a lot of people have talked about Hearth Elemental, and the first thing that a lot of people think about when they see Hearth Elemental is, bam, Dredge got a new good one. And I talked to a few Dredge players. I looked around on some forums and stuff, and it seems like opinions in the Dredge community are a bit more mixed. But there also might be other homes besides Dredge for Hearth Elemental. We can take this one slowly. Stoke Genius, 1 in a red, Sorcery Adventure, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. So when you compare that to cards like Cathartic Reunion, where you discard 2 and then draw 3, like draw 3 might be getting more Dredge action through. Also, Dredge does want to hold cards in his hand sometimes. Sometimes it wants to make more land drops. Sometimes it's got sideboard cards that it just like doesn't want to bin. This card does make you lose your entire hand, which can be an advantage if you literally want every card in your hand in the graveyard, but it can also be a disadvantage for the reasons I just mentioned. Anyway, but that's just the adventure part. Once the creature is on the adventure, you've got this 5 and a red, 4/5, chilling in exile. It's not getting binned. It's hanging out, ready to be played. It says this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard that are instant cards, sorcery cards, and or have an adventure. So, Dredge has about like 20 instants and sorceries. Some of those are creeping chills that exile themselves. And then if you're adding Hearth Elemental, like you're adding, you know, cards that have an adventure, but it's probably replacing instants and sorceries, right? Because those are other Dredge enablers. So the number probably stays about the same. Anyway, so there's a solid chance you'll be able to play this on the cheap. When thinking about this card, it kind of reminds me of Seasoned Pyromancer in the way that it plays out, right? If this is the last card you play, then you're spending 2 mana, drawing 2 cards, and then you've got a 1 red 4/5 that you can play. So 1 red and draw 2 cards, have a creature. Hey, Red Briar thinks the sub, thinks the 37 months. You're thinking about this card for Rhinos? Yeah, maybe it's like your literal last card, if that's when you want to play this. I don't think... Does Rhinos have enough spells where this is just better than Seasoned Pyromancer? Rhinos has played Seasoned Pyromancer before. The issue with this, so I think most of the cards that those Cascade decks want to play is that they want to play them before turn 3, right? They want them to be early game interaction. Cards like Fire Ice are really nice because they can allow you to interact before you before your key turn, where you play all your Cascaders and start impacting the board that way. And this card isn't that, right? So this card's competing with Seasoned Pyromancer or Murktide. It's competing for those like couple of flex slots, and I don't think it's quite there. The decks where Hearth Elemental makes the most sense. We already talked about Dredge a bit. Dredge hasn't really done much in Modern lately, but it's probably still worth testing out, I've seen some people compare it to Ox of Agonis. The difference is that this card works even if you don't have a lot of cards in your graveyard. This deck can like start things going from an empty graveyard, whereas Ox, you need to already be rolling. But Ox is clearly much better once you're already rolling, Another shell. Hollow One has also not been great for a long time. My gods, I try though. I try with Hollow. Every time I see someone place with it, I'm like, I want to try Hollow One again. It's so much fun. It's a really, really fun archetype. I could see this card working well in this deck. You know, combine it with the Street Wraith, and all of a sudden you have a Hollow One in play. I kind of have a poor deck list for this, because this is like the Unearth, Infernal Plunge, Underworld Breach like combo variant, which I don't think the Hearth Elemental would actually fit very well in, as opposed to like regular just again cycle a Street Wraith, play a Hearth Elemental, that sort of deal. Get to your Hollow Ones that way. Again, another Ox of Agonis deck though. In playing Hollow One, do you have to aggressively mold a Hollow One? No, you can't really. You can't really do that. Because you can't mulligan to Hollow One, and then, like... you might not even keep the Hollow One post-Burning Inquiry, right? you kind of just want Burning Inquiry. You kind of want Burning Inquiry or Goblin Lore. And then after you resolve those cards, like, maybe you have a Hollow One, maybe you don't. It's a high-variance deck, for sure. For sure. Maybe Hollow Vine. Yeah, I think Hearth Elemental... It is cool that Hearth Elemental is also a creature for Hollow Vine. I'm wondering how easy it is to get enough spells in Hollow Vine, right? With Hearth Elemental. That said, it does say adventures as well. There's that self-milling 04 Merfolk that you could play in Vengevine. So you played the for the merchant that loots, for the self-mill Merfolk, for Hearth Elemental. Like that's 12, and then you play a few spells that loot as well. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Is Bedlam Reveler not good anymore in this deck? No. So the reason that Ox sees a lot of play and Bedlam Reveler doesn't in this deck specifically is the Ox will naturally end up in your graveyard from the Burning Inquiries and the Goblin Lores. So you have this full graveyard, and you're just like randomly binning Ox just by casting your spells. So it's really nice to have the cards that come back from the graveyard. Which Bedlam Reveler doesn't do, right? You need to be able to cast the Bedlam Reveler from your hand. Anyway, one other spot that Hearth Elemental might be interesting in is Phoenix. So you're not going to want to cast Hearth Elemental on turn 2 in Phoenix. You're not going to want to cast Stoke Genius on turn 2 in Phoenix. But it is a threat, you know? It is a threat that's also a spell in your deck that, like, is threat light but needs to have a mandatory number of spells for the bird to work. So the fact that you've got a split card here that's both of those things, that's both a spell and a threat, could be quite nice. And especially if you save the Hearth Elemental, if you save the Stoke Genius as your last card, if you play it as sort of a Seasoned Pyromancer, like I was saying earlier, then it can just be value, right? 2 mana, draw 2 cards, 1 mana, play a 4/5, grind people out that way. Hey, Toad Brews, thanks to 84 months, thanks to the sub. Sarah Visions in this economy. Yeah. A lot of these lists are not, like, hyper recent, right? A lot of these lists are what has done well in the past, like, several months. So obviously this deck should have a preordain over Sarah Visions. Thanks for pointing that out. I don't think I have anything from last year, though. I think everything is within this year at the very least. Could Hearth Elementals see play in Elementals? No, absolutely not. Elementals, you really want board presency stuff. You want creatures that you can play early on. It's a collected company deck, too. So there's just, like, no world that Hearth Elemental makes sense there. And it's never going to be much cheaper, right? Like, the only spells in your deck are 4 Cocos. Yeah, Pinfildorf, that's what the hashtag MTG Ambassador is doing. You're in love with the amount of tabs I have open? Yeah, that's the, that's it, huh? That's the, that's the set review. I'm just gonna be going tab by tab. And that'll go through every single card I want to talk about in orderly fashion. It seemed an easy way to have like a bunch of deck lists to go through for each card, and it's just like have all the tabs up, and then I can go through them from left to right. Anyway, yeah. So Hearth Elemental is super interesting. Again, I don't think it's necessarily at its best in the Dredge deck, even though that's the most intuitive home for it. But that said, I think it might juice up one of these other lower tier modern decks. Certainly a powerful looking card, certainly interesting. And as a lover of Seasoned Pyromancer, I do like the looks of it. I'll probably be giving it a spin a little bit myself. You missed the first card? The first card was not dead. Not dead after all. Pretty intuitive one. Anyway, we're gonna keep on moving. Gonna keep on trucking. There's a few cards later on that might take up some time. This one, Agatha's Soul Cauldron. This one's a bit complicated. There's a lot of text here. It's fairly intuitive once you realize how it works, but there's a lot of text here. Hey, Rourke9, thanks for 36 months there. This thing is cracked. This thing is indeed cracked. It's a legend, so I don't know if the decks that are playing it are going to want more than 1 or 2. And I don't know if it's going to be like a sideboard card for opponents that are killing your things, or if it's going to be like a main deck 1 or 2 of. I don't know. But I agree with the sentiment that this card is cracked. And we'll get into why in just a sec here. Agatha's Soul Cauldron, 2 mana for legendary artifact. You may spend mana as the or mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. That line's not that relevant with most of the interesting modern things, I think. Second paragraph. Creatures you control with 1/1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Tap. Exile target card from a graveyard. A graveyard. So, you can... this is also graveyard hate for the opponent. For some reason. Exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. So just by itself, assuming like you've just got like one creature in the graveyard, one creature in play, you can tap, exile that creature in your graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on your creature in play. Now that creature in play gains all the abilities for all the creatures underneath Soul Cauldron. If you only activate it once, it's only got that one thing. Neat. There are several decks in Modern that have a lot of activated abilities and a lot of synergies with 1/1 counters. And we're going to look at a couple of them now. The first and most intuitive home is Yawgmoth, because Yawgmoth is, you know, a deck to beat in Modern, right? It's like one of the better decks available. If there's a Yawgmoth in your bin, you can exile it, and all of your creatures with 1/1 counters are going to have Yawgmoth's ability. Since your creatures with 1/1 counters are going to be like Strangleroot, Geist, and Young Wolf, that seems like a useful thing to get. that seems great. Less intuitively, Grist is also in this deck. Grist is a creature in all places except the battlefield. So when you exile Grist to Agatha, I believe all of your creatures with 1/1 counters on them gain the ability to get +1 Planeswalker loyalty and put a 1/1 in play and continue self-milling. Now you can't -2 or -5 because your creatures aren't going to start with Planeswalker loyalties to spend. But you should be able to +1 it, and then +1 it next turn, and then finally -2. Creatures can indeed gain loyalty. Yeah. So that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird, and I expect is going to end up being super relevant, Interestingly, I think if a creature is doing loyalty abilities and you -2 it, I don't think it's dying, right? If you -2 to go down to 0 loyalty, because it's not a Planeswalker, right? And so why would it die? You can just keep on upticking and downticking again. Yeah, I think those are the two main ones here. Obviously, being able to exile a Mana Dork could come up, right? Exile a Mana Dork. Now your Young Wolf or Strangleroot Geist that has a 1/1 counter on it can also be a Mana Dork. Or if you put a 1/1 counter on your Orcish Bowmasters. Or the army itself from Orcish Bowmasters is just a 1/1 counter base, right? So many 1/1 counters here. Anyway. Yeah, Agatha's Soul's Cauldron definitely seems worth trying out. And I would probably start with 2 in the main deck and see how it plays. But who knows, right? Who knows? Right, Yogg does not have a great way to tutor it out. It's just gonna like randomly show up and be good sometimes. Start with 4 for testing. I do not recommend starting with 4 of a 2-mana legendary artifact that does nothing by itself. That does not seem like you're going to have good testing results if you're just drawing redundant copies of a legend. Does this make Hardened Scales pop off? Hardened Scales? Well, that's an interesting idea. Let's talk about that deck. So Agatha's Soul Cauldron seems pretty good with these Hardened Scales cards as well, Just imagine all of your creatures with 1/1 counters getting the ability of Arcbound Ravager or Walking Ballista. Your Patchwork Automaton gets so big so quickly, and now it can just be a Walking Ballista. It does feel like Agatha's is opening up quite a few fast combos with this deck, huh? I'm not a Hardened Scales expert, so I don't know what you would be replacing in this deck. This deck, unlike Yogg, I think you could start with more. You could start with more than 2. Because this deck has sack outlets, right? You can sacrifice extras to Arcbound Ravager. I think the correct number is still going to be in the 2 to 3 range. But again, I'm not an expert in this deck. I don't know what you're cutting. I just know that it looks awooga bonkers, huh? Just woo! Just fucking, yeah. Yeah, absolutely unreal. The fact that it's adding a 1/1 counter. Hey, Benjamin Wheeler, thanks for the raid. Welcome, folks. Yeah, we're in the middle of a constructed set review for the new Eldraine set coming out. And right now we're talking about Agatha Soul's Cauldron. I'm not going to go over the card entirely. I'm not going to read all that text again, but you're welcome to read it while it's up on the screen if you're not familiar yet. Thanks again, Benjamin, for the raid. Anyone that's not following Ben, please do so. Ben rules. Where was I? Can we get a shout out for Ben? I can do that. Yeah. Reminder that this set is available for pre-order at this time. Yes. Did I arena open this past weekend? I did. I only fired off a few bullets and I did not get there. The best I did was 5 and 3. Let's get back to the card, huh? Something that's really cool about Soul Cauldron in this deck is that like this deck actively wants to put a 1/1 counter on something as well, right? So with the Hardened Scales in play, now you're putting 2 1/1 counters on something with the Soul Cauldron itself, on top of getting all the abilities. That's juicy. That's heckin' juicy as heck. Yeah, I expect when the set comes out, there's going to be a lot of people testing this. And Agatha's is a mythic. Hey, sup, Luality. Luality, did you finish your Baldur's Gate 3 run? I saw you were getting close. This looks like a way better hearse. Oh yeah, the Agatha Soul Cauldron. Yeah, the fact that it has incidental graveyard hate attached, being able to hit your opponent's things. You're gonna have games where you're playing, like say this deck against Yawgmoth, and you get to exile their Yawgmoth or something, and just go nuts with it. Yeah, getting to use the opponent's activated abilities is no joke either. You started an evil run? Nice. Yeah, I also started an evil run in Baldur's Gate 3. Currently my characters are dying or leaving the party, or like I'm 9 hours in and I only have 4 of the starting characters. And that's just my group. That's who I've got right now. But I'm having a good time. Anyway. Yeah, I think we get the idea. I think we get the idea of Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Heck of a card, huh? Heck of a great card. If they use a Haywire Mite, yeah, you could use yours. Is Soul Cauldron going into the next Vintage Cube? So Soul Cauldron is a very powerful card, but it's also pretty niche, right? I think if you're going to put Soul Cauldron into a cube, it needs to, like, for sure have, like, a critical mass of activated abilities. And I'm not sure the current Vintage Cube is constructed in that way. So there's a couple really cool cards that would work, right? Like exiling a Grizzlebrand would be awesome, or a Kiki Jiki, that sort of thing. And just getting those abilities. And having it be Graveyard Hate for the opponent's thing is pretty nice. But it is a lot of text, and the ability is kind of niche. So in Modern, like, you've got these decks where, like, the entire deck is built around a few key cards that have these activated abilities. They're going to play well with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. It's harder to consistently have that set up in Cube. I think this card would work really well in Carmen Handy's Proliferate Cube. I think that's a really intuitive home for this card. But yeah, I don't think I would put it in the Vintage. Any brews in Pioneer with this one? Agatha's Soul Cauldron? Yeah, I can't think of any. Not off the top of my head. I wasn't really considering the card for Pioneer. It seems like a Modern slam dunk, and I'm less convinced about other formats. Historic also has Yogg, also probably wants this card as well, right? You think it goes into one of the arena cubes? Yeah, I could see that. People already figured out how to make infinite mana in Standard with it. Someone will find something in Pioneer. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. The thing, like, sometimes people find these niche synergies and they're interesting and fun and potentially even quite good, but they still might not be playable in the format, right? Even if something is powerful, it might just, like, not line up. I'm less keyed into Standard than I used to be. A bit more with Pioneer, but even then, if you want to read a set review of someone who's, like, really keyed into the Pioneer format, Doomwake did one pretty recently, and I learned a lot from it. That guy streams a lot more Pioneer than me, and he had different takes on, like, a lot of these cards because of that. And he was excited by some cards that were just, like, way over my head and just, like, weren't of interest to me at all. Anyway. Speaking of Pioneer, the only reason I suggest this card, and potentially in Historic too, is I've played worse versions of this. I've played worse versions of this card relatively recently at that. So your base stats, 1 in red for 1/1 haste. Not exciting, except for that one of the options is you can put a Wicked Roll token attached to target creature you control. And again, we can bring that up again. So it can be a 2-mana 2/2 with haste, and then when it dies, each opponent loses 1 life. That's not the worst. I've played worse cards in Pioneer. I have already played worse cards in Pioneer, and that's not addressing the other 2 abilities. The other 2 create a treasure token and discard a card, then draw a card. These are sweet. Red likes a loot. Red likes a little bit of filtering. It's not like that impressive, like to play a 2-mana 1/1 that discards a card and then draws a card. It's not like broken or anything like that, but as an option, you know, if you're flooding out, try and find some gas. I'm pretty sure that if you're Hellbent, I'm pretty sure if you have no cards in hand, you still get to, like, choose that option and just draw a card too. Right, there's no if you do clause on the discard then draw. Anyway, but I think if you're playing this card, you probably want to have some interest in the create a treasure token. And I've had that pretty recently. Something of note, the create a wicked roll token attached to target creature you control, you cannot stack roll tokens. You can only have 1 roll token at a time, and if you put a second one on a creature, the first one falls off. And so in the case of wicked roll, that will ping your opponent for 1. You won't get another 1/1+1/+1 aura, but you will ping the opponent for 1. So it's a good thing to keep in mind in case you need to ping somebody to close out a close game, But yeah, similar cards I've seen play. Wily Goblin has seen play in Historic, of course, helping you ramp up to Muxus. Obviously, this isn't a Goblin. It's not going to see play in Goblins. But this is something that I 5-0'd with earlier this year. And this is an older list. Like, I've updated the deck. I didn't like Kugla. I didn't like Embercleave. I cut down on the Innkeepers. But the fact that I was playing Innkeepers, and I did 5-0 with a version that had quad Innkeeper in it, My idea behind Innkeeper in this deck is you've got a 2-mana 1/1, basically treating it like Wily Goblin, right? If the whole deck is tutoring up Ancient Imperiosaur and powering it out, then having a creature that can account for 2 mana, that can leave mana in play even if the opponent kills it, is really, really sweet. Because you don't need to like have full 7 creatures for Ancient Imperiosaur for it to be a sweet card, right? For it to be a fast murdery thing. Even if you're only convoking it for like 3 or 4, it's still a great card. And having Innkeeper in play, having that extra treasure, made it way more likely that you could do it a full turn sooner and get another attack in, being down with your Hasty Dino. So, Charming Scoundrel is much better than Prosperous Innkeeper in this deck. Just a huge, very obvious upgrade. And the Innkeeper was, like, not quite good enough. Like, I was trimming back on it the last time I tested this deck, but I'm pretty excited to play Charming Scoundrel in here. It's, like, perfect. It's like a perfect swap, perfect upgrade. Can I add the Wicked thing again? Yeah, I mean, it's not really blocking anything of relevance. It's literally just the mana base. The important thing here is the Innkeeper and seeing the synergy with Imperiosaur. It's not, again, this is an outdated deck list. It's just here for demonstration. This is not blocking anything. It's like 2 lands. Anyway. Reminds you of Aether Channeler in terms of design. Yeah, 3 modes. Odds are one of them will end up being relevant, right? Options are good. Options are heckin' good. Yeah, shout out to, midstream shout out to Wizards of the Coast for that hashtag MTG Ambassador program. Sending me some product in the mail. In return, getting this little bit of sponsorship here. And a reminder that you can, in fact, pre-order the set now. All right. Yeah, so this was, I think Charming Scoundrel was the literal first creature of the set that I saw that really started the gears rolling. And I don't think it's going to be like some nutty bomb, but I do think it's going to show up. It's going to show up in a few different places. Be a nice solid little role player. This next one is slightly more of a stretch. I spaced the heaters out a little bit. They're not all clumped up. And this next one might see no play whatsoever, but I think it's sweet. And it did make my gears start rolling a little bit. And that's Regal Bunnicorn. So Regal Bunnicorn, 1 and a white, star. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. And the reason this card excited me, like just at its base, it is not great, right? You've got a 2-mana 1/1. It does count itself, so you got a 2-mana 1/1. But it seems like it stacks up really quickly, right? You got an Aether Vial, you put a Stoneforge Mystic into play, all of a sudden this Regal Bunnicorn's a 3/3, you vial in the equipment, now it's a 4/4. If they activate your Urza Saga, now it's a 5/5. Your Saga goes and gets another permanent. Bungoyf, yes. Rancor's best friend? Yeah, or the Lifelink Spear, The Trample Lifelink Spear in Modern. Giving trample and lifelinks. You want to play it in the Academy Manufacturer deck? Me too, Rootballa. That is my main justification for talking about Regal Bunnicorn right here, is I've been playing a lot of Manufactor decks, and those decks spit out plenty of tokens. And one way that those decks already have of converting those tokens into damage is just playing Urza Saga, right? And converting all of your artifacts into pure damage, and it's a bit more free and stuff. Urza Saga, a much better card than Regal Bunnicorn. I'm not splitting any hairs here. I'm not painting any turds. Urza Saga is a better card than Regal Bunnicorn. However, the fact that Bunnicorn counts not just your artifacts, but all of your other permanents in play as well, could make it sweet in versions that aren't as high on Urza Saga. This deck, for example, is very good at just having all of the tokens in the world in play at once. And even though Bunnicorn doesn't have any abilities, it doesn't naturally have evasion or something, like at a certain point, a 2-mana XX, if X is large enough, that card will be good and playable, and you will want to, like, Court of Calling for it at some point, huh? Like, obviously a 2-mana 20/20 is good enough. That will happen sometimes in this deck. And then, the smaller numbers will be pretty enticing as well. Is this a potential fling target? I'm not sure. Maybe the fling that's also a land drop. You'd have to get real creative. People still play Death Shadow, correct. So the spot where Death Shadow is different than Regal Bunnicorn. Death Shadow, the fact that your lands are what's juicing it up, means that like your entire deck can just be disruption. So even though you've got this giant creature that has no evasion, like all of your other cards are disrupting the opponent, killing all of their creatures so that your Death Shadows connect, and you get to win the game. Bunnicorn, the cards that it's surrounding it, the cards that pump it up, are also permanents. So you're not disrupting, your opponent's like still gonna have plenty of ways to block it, that sort of thing. So the Trample Spear is a big difference. The ceiling on Bunnicorn is much higher. I don't know if any of y'all have seen any pictures of the deck, the deck that I have in front of you, in action, but sometimes you literally fill up the entire board with tokens, and it's not even that hard to do. Manufacturers are nutty in multiples. And then, like unlike the other versions of the food deck, you also have all of these mana dorks and such. Those are also buffing the Bunnicorn. Urza's Bowmaster, 2 permanents for it. So on and so forth. Gilded Goose, 2 permanents for it. Yeah. So again, Regal Bunnicorn, extremely low confidence level on this one. I'm not talking it up as like some modern nutter butter, but it might be fun to test out in a food deck specifically. Especially a deck that can chord for it when it's relevant, huh? Just like have 1 copy in there. Maybe even rebuild to be a Saga deck so you can tutor up the equipment that gives trample and lifelink. Gonna be great murdering people with a rabbit unicorn. Yeah, right? Alright. We're probably gonna spend a little bit of time on this one. Beseech the Mirror. One black. Sorcery. Bargain. Bargain says you may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast this spell. Search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. If this spell was bargained, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost if that spell's mana value is 4 or less. Put the exiled card into your hand if it wasn't cast in this way. Yeah, the fact that it's cast, and chat already seems to be high on this, the fact that it was cast means that the One Ring is definitely a combo with it. By itself, Beseech cycles the One Ring, sacrificing the first one that's already loaded up with counters and is damaging you, and then casts the next one. So you're going to be able to float One Rings, chain them into each other, even when you're at a very, very low life, and you're going to be able to do that very consistently. It's going to be frustrating. It's going to be a frustrating time to play Magic. I'm not going to butter this up. That is something that's going to happen more often than you would like it to. If you are playing against the mono black deck that can afford to play Beseech the Mirror and the One Ring. I think I have that up here. This is an example of the mono black control deck in Modern. So even if you're not sacrificing the One Ring to go get another copy of the One Ring, there's a lot of nice juicy targets, right? Damnation, Karn. There's a lot of cards in here that can be game-ending if you have them at the right time, if you have them in the right spot. And Beseech the Queen is just gonna... I'm sorry, not Beseech the Queen. Beseech the Mirror. A similar name. Very different card. Beseech the Mirror is just gonna help that happen much more often. Now, the ability to sacrifice is relevant. Like the additional cost of having to sacrifice a token, an artifact, or what was the third one? Or enchantment, right? Yeah, no enchantments here. I guess you could sacrifice a Leyline of the Void in some formats. That's a free one. But yeah, Bowmasters create a token very handily for this deck. It's like a value token that you don't care about very much. So it's nice to have that floating around. If you have 5 mana, you can sack a Nile Spellbomb and pay the black, and then you're not even losing value, right? Like you get to draw a card off of that. That said, the deck probably wants to up the number of like free artifacts if you're going to start playing Beseech the Mirror. Urza's Bauble is a free cantrip that you could run that also turns on Fatal Push, and then you can also just leave it in play until the turn that you draw Beseech the Queen, sack it to Beseech the Queen, pop off that way. One consideration for the deck is it does cost triple black. Currently, the deck list doesn't have any triple black cards. You might want to lower the number of fields in the deck, or maybe you want to go back to playing Expedition Map to have Urborg more consistently. Another bonus of going back to Expedition Map is that is also more artifacts to sacrifice to Beseech the Queen, right? Or Beseech the Mirror. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep saying the wrong one. Artifact lands. You can play artifact lands. I don't know if you want to play comes into play tapped lands in this deck. There is the Darksteel Citadel, of course. But yeah, that comes into play tapped artifact lands, also an option, I suppose. This will be spicy in Legacy. Legacy? Yeah, we'll talk about Legacy. We'll talk about Legacy and Gaia's Will. So Gaia's Will is basically a Yawgmoth's Will, but it hasn't really seen play in the same way that a lot of Cascade hits have seen play. Because it's very obnoxious. Like suspending 4 and waiting 4 turns before your combo turn hasn't really worked. And if you're trying to Cascade into it to cast it for free that way, then that's pretty tricky too, right? Like now how do you abuse it? Because now all your deck is Cascaders, so all you're really doing is recasting Gaia's Will. Beseech the Mirror, however, gets to play this card for free. And when you consider that you're basically getting a Yawgmoth's Will, which is a 3-mana card, that's pretty good. A Demonic Tutor for the Yawgmoth's Will and casting it is pretty excellent. And it hasn't really been something that Legacy has had available. But yeah, Legacy players have been hyping this up. This interaction between Beseech the Mirror and Gaia's Will up quite a bit. Here's a list of some straightforward Beseech the Mirror combo lines in Legacy. So JaxMDG posted these on Twitter. Got a lot of retweets in the Legacy community and stuff. As just like some basic ideas, initial thoughts using this Gaia's Will card. So turn 1, Swamp, double Dark Ritual, you have 5 mana, you cast Beseech the Mirror, sacking any artifact. This could even be a Vault of Whispers, right? Or I guess it can't be a Vault of Whispers, it has to be something that you can replay with Gaia's Will, but any 0-mana artifact at all. A blank Chrome Mox, a Mishra's Bauble, a Lotus Petal, whatever you have handy. You sack, you go get Gaia's Will, Beseech the Mirror and cast the Gaia's Will. Then you just like do it again. You do the same chain, Dark Ritual, 0 mana, sack, Tendrils, bam, dead. I wonder if the second Dark Ritual even has to be a Dark Ritual, right? Like, you have an extra mana in this. I think the second Dark Ritual could be a Lotus Petal as well. So if you have Dark Ritual, double Lotus Petal, I think this also works. Yeah, because Beseech only costs 4. An extra mana to cast the rituals again. Oh, good point. Fair enough, fair enough. Yes, you can't have exactly 4. Because you still need to be... No, oh, right, yeah. So you played the Lotus Petal from your graveyard, and then you'd only have 3 mana. Yeah, good call. Good call. It does need to be double Dark Ritual. Or Dark Ritual, 2 Lotus Petals. But anyway. Thanks for the correction. Alright, second line. Vault of Whispers. Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, Lotus Petal, Beseech, Gaia's Will. Play them all back. Yeah, this is kind of what I was just talking about. With having like double 1 mana things instead of one of the Dark Rituals. This one's kind of cool because you're using Lotus Petal for mana at first, on your first play, sacking the Vault of Whispers, and then on the replay, you're playing it and then using it for the bargain. Kind of cute. So this is an opener. If you want to think about this next line, it's a lot more intuitive if you just like consider this being your 7-card opener. Where you've got Beseech, 3 0-mana artifacts, a Vault of Whispers, and 2 rituals. You're just casting the 2 rituals, Beseech, sacking an artifact, get another Beseech, sack the next artifact, get another Beseech, sack the next artifact, get a Beseech, sack your Vault of Whispers, and play Tendrils. Kind of a silly chain. Not very likely to be your opening 7, right? Not very likely to be your opening 7, but if you're aware of this line, you're more likely to see it when you're just like in the middle of a game, realize, hey, I've got 4 artifacts sitting here doing nothing. I can just kill my opponent. Obviously, you need to play something for Storm, but who knows? Maybe they're not at 20, maybe they're at a little bit less, so on and so forth. This one's cute. So Swamp, Dark Ritual, LED. Any 0-mana sacrifice. You're gonna Infernal Tutor for Beseech, sack any 0 for Gaia's Will. Replay the LED. Tutor for Tendrils, win. And then finally, this one's a little different. This one's literally just make 4 mana, Beseech, sack an artifact, empty the Warrens, giving you 10 goblins with just black mana on turn 1. Or just sort of like a TES start. I haven't seen a lot of Empty the Warrens in Legacy lately, but it's cool. It's a cool line. Over/under on 6 months in Legacy. So right now, I think is actually kind of an ideal time for this card to get printed in Legacy. Because Mind's Desire just got unprinted. So right now, the amount of anti-storm hate in Legacy is like the highest I've ever seen it. The hate is there. So if this card dominates, despite that being the meta, then yeah, it won't last 6 months. Unless, you know, it's just like given an excessive amount of time. My guess is it's going to be fine, though. Because no matter how broken the tutors and enablers are, like, you still have to beat whatever hate cards your opponent has. Unprinted? Oh, is that what I said? Yeah, I meant Mind's Desire got unbanned. Mind's Desire got unbanned, and still a lot of people are messing with Mind's Desire. And so the Legacy queues, on Moto at least, are very, very filled with hate. And maybe that comment doesn't make sense for someone's like local Legacy metagame. Deafening Silence is indeed a good card. A good hoser. The Vault can be an Urza's Saga in some of these lines. Oh yeah, that's true. Which will happen a solid number of the time, right? A solid amount of the time. This is one of the archetypes that was floated as being a good shell for this card. So, looking at the deck, thinking about how to make room for Beseech the Mirror, you probably don't want Ad Naus anymore if you're adding 4/4 drops, right? And maybe you don't need this Burning Wish. And I feel like Infernal Tutor gets worse if you're adding 4 Beseeches. A few of the lines we looked at also involved Infernal Tutor. You want to play more Burning Wishes with this card. Tutor for a copy from the sideboard. Yeah, you'll lose the ability to chain 4 of them together. You'll lose that line. But that's a valid comment. I do think Infernal Tutor gets worse. The reason this deck is only playing 1 Burning Wish is because it is base mono black, right? And like none of the lands are tapping for red. Being able to play quad Vault of Whispers is really, really nice with Beseech the Mirror. Shadow Spear is in the deck just for Urza's Sagas. I feel like it doesn't need to be in there, huh? It feels like it could be a copy of Beseech the Mirror, maybe.
Oh shit, what up?
Hey, Commander Door, thanks for gifting a sub to Malamanto Man. You can play Profane Tutor with this card if you have an extra mana and need an extra storm. Yeah, I suppose. There's all these, like, better tutors in the deck already, though. If you just need 1 more storm. Hey, play Wheel of Fate. Hey, that's an idea. Just play a draw 7 in there. Yeah, because this card can't play Echo. It can't play Echo of Eons. But you're right, it could play Wheel of Fate. I think you want to be a little careful in terms of how many weird ones you want to play. Gaia's Will. Going back to Gaia's Will, that's like kind of the problem with this card, right? Is that sometimes you will draw it. Sometimes you will draw the Gaia's Will that you're like basing your all these Beseech the Mirror chains on. There's a couple different ways to play around that. You could play 2 copies of Gaia's Will, and now you've got 2 dead draws in your deck. You could be making sure that you're playing a Brainstorm decks and just assume that when you draw the Gaia's Will, you can Brainstorm it back into your deck and then Beseech the Mirror for it. You could suck it up, and if you draw the Gaia's Will, like now all of a sudden you have to win some other way, some other chain. And then there's that enchantment. As Foretold. You could play a single copy of As Foretold, just in case you draw the Gaia's Will, and then you tutor for the As Foretold, and that lets you play the Will. The As Foretold plan, playing 1 As Foretold and 1 Gaia's Will, is better in case you draw both copies, because then you can still, it still works. Playing 2 Gaia's Wills is better if the opponent pulls 1 out of your hand from discard. Electro Dominance, sure. The Storm Nerds are going to have a lot of fun tuning this. And again, like, it's not just a Storm card, right? So like in Modern, I was talking about sacrificing 1 ring and going and getting another 1 ring. I think that's going to be something that people do in Legacy as well. I think Helm Combo in particular wants this Beseech the Mirror card because it's also mono black. And that deck is desperate for tutors. That deck plays some atrocious tutors sometimes to get things working. And Beseech the Mirror seems like it's going to like open up a lot more fast kills from that deck and more consistently. There were more. Oh yeah, Doomsday. I don't know if Doomsday is going to be able to have enough 0 mana artifacts for Beseech the Mirror to be consistent. But if you can build Doomsday in such a way that Beseech the Mirror is consistent, it is a way better card, right? Than casting like Personal Tutor and tutoring Doomsday to the top of your library and then casting it the next turn. Spending 1 more mana than Doomsday to like also cast it that turn. It's going to lead to some faster kills. But again, you have to rebuild the whole deck. I did see a Doomsday list recently that was playing the 1 ring. So maybe you do something like that, where you have the 1 ring, Doomsday, and Beseech the Mirror. Another important combo piece to get in Legacy is that Oops All Spells card. Balustrade Spy. Oops All Spells. So I don't know how many artifacts modern Oops All Spells plays. But Legacy Oops All Spells definitely has enough, right? Between Lotus Petal and Chrome Mox. Maybe that's not enough. We can look at a couple deck lists real quick. Yeah, this list only has 2 Chrome Mox and 4 Lotus Petal. So something to consider, but it seems like it's going to be very hard to actually have enough artifacts for this card to be consistent. What about Modern? So Modern actually has a few more, because we've got these Pented Prisms, Talismans and stuff. You could, like, sacrifice a Sword of the Meek, which you want in your graveyard anyway. And you're not just tutoring for Balustrade Spy, you could also tutor up Goblin Charbelcher in this deck. That's kind of sweet. I think that's relevant. I don't know what you're cutting. I don't know what you're cutting for the Beseech the Mirror. I'm not an Oops specialist. I've only played against the deck sometimes. I haven't picked it up myself. But I think this is another potential home for it. Do we have any Oops specialists in the chat? It seems like a pretty tight deck. Like, I don't know if Creeping Chills are the only thing that you can cut. That's part of it, though, right? The Creeping Chills play with the Vengevine plan. This doesn't work with creativity? No, it does not. Because you're not getting the X. You definitely Oops all the time? Oh, good. Well, we certainly have some experts in. It takes a lot to find a spot in Oops, sure. It's possible that instead of Charbelcher or Informer, you want some number of Beseech the Mirror, and then you can, like, find the... You can, whichever win is more applicable, you can find it more consistently. But yeah, having to sacrifice is a big deal. Worth considering. Alright. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, and then when I come back, we'll talk about Beanstalk Wurm. A very important modern card, I'm sure. Modern and Pioneer, huh? Beanstalk? Hey, it's a worm. Hey, leave me alone. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's having a pleasant Monday evening as we look over these Eldraine cards and get hyped up about cards like Beanstalk Wurm. So the home that I think this card might be sweet in, the reason I want to talk about Beanstalk Wurm, is because putting an extra land into play seems like a relevant thing to be doing with Fires of Invention. There are other ways for a Karuga deck. Karuga's got that pesky requirement that everything in the deck costs 3 or more, right? So there are other ways in a Karuga deck of ramping out of Fires of Invention, but I don't think they help you put an extra land into play while you do so. This is giving you a turn 3 Fires. Turn 3 Fires, then you get to play the free spell, and now all of a sudden your Karuga turn is jumped up just like a full turn. The other cool thing about Beanstalk Wurm in this shell, by being a free spell, you will just like get to play it for free sometimes. It will just be like a spell that you run out to play before the Karuga and get to draw an extra card. That's a really good way of looking at it, Rourke. If Explore always drew you into a 5/4, And of course, a 5-mana 5/4 isn't Pioneer legal, isn't Modern legal. But when you've got very specific deck building restrictions, when you're trying to build around Karuga and Fires of Invention, I think it could make sense. I think it could be worth the slots. Olander says that it's also a plant, which would be cool if that was relevant, but it's not. Oh no. Get that Avenger of Zendikar trigger. Anyway. Yeah, I've seen people playing Fires in Modern and Pioneer. I'm not a Fires expert. I'm not a Karuga expert. But that is the spot where I could see this one making sense. Best art in the set, the Beanstalk Wurm. It's pretty good art. It's pretty darn good. So this is one that I don't think is quite there, but I have seen people talking about it. Anytime they print a card that like looks kind of like Delver of Secrets, people have to talk about it. The the thing with this one, so it's 1 blue for a 3/3 flyer, ward 2. Pretty nutter stats. If it just stopped there, you'd have an incredible Magic the Gathering card. But it also enters the battlefield tapped with 3 stun counters on it, which means that if it would become untapped, instead you remove a stun counter from it. And then it's also got this ability for 1 and a blue to untap it. So if you have the extra mana, you can untap it sooner. You don't have to spend a full 3 turns before it turns into a regular creature. Sarah Avenger. Yeah, that's a fun comparison. Suspend 3. Yeah, I always thought, back in the day, I always called Delver of Secrets, Moon Heron with suspend ? And sometimes that's pretty good. Sometimes that's a very good card. Now in Legacy, people still play Delver every once in a while. I don't know if they're just like nostalgic for the throwback or what, but it does still see occasional play. The issue is in Legacy that you can like manipulate the top cards of your library very easily. And so it takes a lot fewer than 3 turns to have your 3/2 attacking them. Now, Ward 2 is not nothing, and this is going to be legal in more formats than just Legacy. So perhaps turn 1 on the play in Standard, where removal costs a little bit more, where Ward 2 might do a little bit more, where you're like less likely to have something to do on turns 2 and 3, and you can just like pump some mana into it sometimes. You don't have to do it all the time. Like sometimes you can curve out with other cards, but just the fact that you can speed things up if you have the extra mana is kind of nice. I think you really have to be valuing the Ward 2, and it's hard for that to be the case in Modern. Like by the time a Sleep Cursed Fairy is attacking, your opponent does not mind spending 3 mana to point a lightning bolt at it. It just takes way too long to get rolling. Amulet of Vigor, Stompy. It's not even that good with the Amulet of Vigor. You're just removing a single stun counter. The Agatha's Cauldron synergy in Standard is something. Oh, sure. So you're giving the untap ability to a creature in Standard. Why doesn't it work with Dress Down? So Dress Down removes the untap ability and the flying in the Ward 2. It won't remove the counters. So if you Dress Down on the opponent's end of turn, it still has 3 stun counters on it. And they're still going to do the stun counter thing. You think it might be decent in Pioneer? Yeah, I'm less confident of that. But Yeah, who knows? I wanted to talk about this card because I saw other folks talking about it. Every time I read it and I think about how long 3 stun counters is, I get less excited. And then my eyes look up to the word 2 and flying, and I get excited again. And then I see the 3 stun counters again, and I get unexcited again. Very difficult to go through so many emotions on one card. Right, yes. Games are often ended in a few turns. Here's another one that I'm not very confident in, but I've seen people discussing. Up the Beanstalk. 1 green for an enchantment. Put up the Beanstalk into the battlefield, and whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, draw a card. So, when you first play this card, it does replace itself, and that's nice. That's very important. It's very important to this card's playability. And then whenever you play a spell with mana value 5 or greater, there's actually a solid number of those that you can play for free, and do see play for free these days. In Legacy, Force of Will is the standout, right? But in Modern, you've got Fury, you've got Solitude. Gush draws 3 cards. Yeah. Are you saying out for Cube? This is a Cube card. This not working in a Karuga deck is an injustice. I mean, that's funny. Leyline Binding's the big one, isn't it? Yeah, your Leyline Binding's cantripping is pretty huge. Something that's very common, in Modern at least, is using Teferi to bounce Leyline to reset it. So Leyline, exile your token, say from your Orcish armies or whatever. Leyline, exile your token, draw a card from up the Beanstalk, Teferi bounce it, replay the Leyline, draw another card from up the Beanstalk, draw your card from the Teferi bounce. You're just going through so many cards, right? So the value deck in Modern loves drawing cards and loves value. Most of its value cards also impact the board in some way. Like Ren and 6 isn't just drawing cards, right? It's also got the ability to ping and impact the board. Teferi cantripping, but again, you're impacting the board, that sort of thing. Omnath puts a 4/4 body in play. Up the Beanstalk is not impacting the board. So I think if anything holds back Up the Beanstalk, it's that fact. That like you have to find the space to just spend 2 mana, not impact the board at all, draw a card, and not just be dead. You are playing in a deck that has like Fury and Solitude, so maybe you're fine. But yeah, that is the big concern. Also note that this ability stacks. So if you get multiples, if you get multiple Up the Beanstalks in play, you can start drawing multiple cards. Pitch cast Solitude, draw 2, that sort of thing. How many cards does this card have to draw over the next 3 turns to be worth it? So it replaces itself, right? I think if you're triggering it just one time, it's not very good. But the odds of it triggering multiple times over the course of a game, especially out of a deck that's like trying to slow down the opponent, seems really high, doesn't it? And then you got the ceiling case, which is not that crazy, of you playing a long extended game and it drawing you like 5 to 7 cards. Use this with Hollow One. Hollow One's the only one that you would play in that deck, right? Or you could play Fury. So you'd have 4 Hollow One, 4 Fury. I feel like that's not enough. I feel like that's not enough. That's a very funny idea, though. It's Sylvan Library is what you're hearing. It might be close to Sylvan Library. I might be underrating this card. Anytime you're doing a set review, you kind of have to caution folks of like, okay, I haven't actually cast this card yet. Maybe it plays better than I think. Maybe it plays worse than I think. We won't really know until we actually get to play with it, right? All the Delve cards cost 5+. So people have played Delve cards in Hollow One before. The only Delve card I've seen people play recently is Murderous Cut. But you can play a few more. You can play some creatures. Right, not great with Ox. Sylvan Library seems like a stretch. Seems like it. It might actually be a bit better. You immediately draw a card when it comes into play. So if your opponent spends a removal spell on it, then the rate is already better than Sylvan Library. You can also play it, draw a card, and immediately need to Force Will something. So you've already drawn 2 cards before Sylvan Library would have gotten a trigger. And then there's games where your life total is being pressured, and getting to draw cards for free is a lot better than having to pay 4 life each. Note that it is not a May of the Beanstalk, so in a field of orcs, it could maybe get awkward. Yorion fodder. Yeah, people still play Yorion in Legacy. Right, Fair Great Justice. Yeah, a lot of decks are going to be able to play this and just immediately start drawing cards, and they won't have to, like, really rework or play a lot of bad cards, right? And the fact that Up the Beanstalk rewards you for playing good cards that you already want to play is part of what makes it enticing. I think the more that I talk about it, the more I'm sold on this card. I started, like, extremely skeptical, and I think I'm coming around. You show up an immediately decent looking card on the screen. Yeah, I've been switching it up Sanity well. We spent a lot of time on the main heaters of the set, and now we're moving into the more speculative cards. I agree with you that this one does look decent though. Who knows how much actual play it's gonna see, but I think I'm getting higher on it. Draw a card off Terminus. Yeah, people are playing Terminus right now. Yeah, I think Leyline's the really big one. And the fact that they stack is really nice. So you play 2, they've already replaced themselves. Now you play a Leyline. Your Leyline gets to draw 2 cards. Maybe this ups the amount that people play Shieldred, or not Shieldred, Solitude in Legacy. Currently, Solitude doesn't see a lot of play in Legacy, but maybe that goes up if you're trying out Up the Beanstalk. Some Yorion pile. You thought Leylines are 4 mana cards? We're very specifically talking about the 6 mana Leyline that costs 1 mana less for basic land types. So when we're talking about casting Leylines, we're talking about this one. So you're going to be spending a single white on this card, exiling something and drawing a card. But yeah, interesting in Modern for sure. Interesting in Legacy. Not sure if it's a cube card or not. In Cube, you can naturally have more cards cost 5 or greater, like people's curves just go up to that. It is harder to like abuse the free and cheap spells. Maybe there's more Delve cards in Cube. Now your Treasure Cruise draws 4. You think it might be better in Legacy than Modern? Maybe. Leyline Binding is worse in Legacy than it is in Modern. You're less keen on playing Tri-lands in Legacy. But you do get Force Will in Legacy. And that rules, huh? That's certainly a good thing. How happy are you to draw multiples of these? I think you are. They stack, you know, they all replace themselves and they all stack. So if you have a couple of these in play, now your 1 mana Leyline Binding is drawing you 2 cards. It seems really hard to lose from that spot, huh? People do not play Pest Infestation in Legacy. Usually you want to play really, really mana efficient spells in Legacy. So like if you're playing an anti... usually the way that a Sylvan Library gets removed in Legacy is Prismatic, the 1 white X removal spell, and so you just point 2 removal spell, two mana at your opponent's Sylvan Library, and it would get exiled that way. And then if people want mass removal, usually they're not playing a spell that cares about enchantments. Usually they're playing like the Springtime card, the 1 green that just like straight up destroys all artifacts, or Meltdown. Something really mana efficient that's really good at dealing with like a lot of Urza Saga tokens all at once. Too bad they banned Yorion. Yeah, I think this would see play with Yorion in Modern. But Yorion is still legal in Legacy, and people still play it. Definitely seems like a card there, huh? Force of Vigor, yeah, Force of Vigor is another good example. Something just really mana efficient. Alright. I think the cards are going to get worse. The Goose Mother. This card's exciting to me, but it's exciting to me because I've been playing a lot of food decks in Modern lately. This is X green blue legendary creature bird Hydra, 2/2 flyer. So your base, if you're just spending 2 manas, you've got a 2 mana 2/2 flyer, and it enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, create half X food tokens, rounded up. Rounded up part matters. Whenever the Goose Mother attacks, you may sack a food. If you do, draw a card. So for 3 mana, you get a 3/3 flyer that puts a food into play. We talked a little bit about food decks earlier. For example, here's one. And those decks are all playing like Quad Academy Manufactor, Gilded Gooses, that sort of thing. Decks that can really just like generate a ton of food. Don't really care about enablers and that sort of deal. This Goose is kind of both. This Goose is a enabler and a payoff. Because when you attacks, you sack a food, draw a card. You can just like churn through the deck that way. It's nice to have what's the word? Not exposable. It's nice to have bodies that you don't care about that much. Right? You throw it out, you get your value. You can throw it in front of something to chump. That sort of deal. 3 mana does tend to be a lot for these decks, even though they're playing like Gooses and stuff. Gilded Gooses. Would I say this Goose is cooked? I would not say that, no. Disposable, that's the word. Thank you, Wolf. You want to tutor for this card? I don't think so. If you tutor this card up, then you're like, if you like chord for it or finale for it or whatever, then you're not getting it that comes into playability, right? Just the attack trigger. The really cool thing about this card is that, I mean, it scales, right? It scales with however much mana you have. But even if you only have a little bit of mana, again, even if you only have 3 mana, you're getting a 3/3 flyer that gives you a food when it comes into play. And I think that's one of the better rates for food generation that we've seen. And it's in the right colors, right? All the food decks are blue-green decks. Want to have a cast trigger like Krasis? You're asking the right person, because I personally designed this card. I know the rationale behind why it comes into play trigger. When this card was spoiled, you said it had potential and everybody called you an idiot. Aw, I'm sorry, Pinfeldorf. I don't think you're an idiot. I think you have to be like really keyed into food decks in Modern before this card gets exciting. Maybe not just Modern, right? There's Arena food decks as well. Right, yeah, the last line, whenever it attacks, you can sack a food to draw a card. Those decks are so good at making food. So if you're like short on food, this makes it. And if you have an excess of food, it's just drawing cards for you. It's not always going to get to live to attack, but if it ever does, that's like the gravy, right? Yeah, so for 3 mana, you're getting a single food. For 4 mana, you're still just getting a single food. But for 5 mana, you start getting 2 food. And you have a 5/5 flyer. Could be sweet. A bomb unlimited? Oh yeah, clearly a bomb unlimited. And next mana, like XX flyers, is gonna be pretty sweet and limited. Did I see the new secret lair? No, I have not looked at them yet. Did this come before the egg? What would the egg look like? Would it have a bunch of little bumps on it? Oh, I guess we can see the eggs in there. All the little heads peeking out. It would only be 1 sack per attack. Yeah, it says you may sacrifice 8 food. That's good. That's value. Oh, thanks, P-Doll. Thanks for the heads up. This is one that I saw people talking about that I don't think is gonna work. Though some people are gonna try it out. Likeness Looter. 1 blue, 1 black, 1/1. Creature fairy shapeshifter. Flying. Taps to loot. Draw a card, then discard a card. X mana, Likeness Looter becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with mana value X, except it has flying and this ability only activate only as a sorcery. So in Legacy, there's kind of like a, not unplayable, but like a tier 3 or tier 4 kind of tempo combo deck using Phyrexian Dreadnought. Oh, it's not a Phyrexian Dreadnought, which is a 1 mana 12/12. That has a pretty gnarly comes into play an ability. But you play it, you use a card that can copy a creature in your graveyard, and then now you have a 12/12 Trampler, and you get to attack and kill people. And then the deck usually plays Uro to copy as well, so you have like a little bit of consistency. The Activate as a sorcery is what kills the playability. It's a big part of it. The Activate as a sorcery is part of it, and the 1 toughness is part of it. So it would be really, really cool if you could upgrade the Graveyard Copier card with something that actually has like a useful ability. This loot is useful. It's really, really nice to have a loot on this card. The bummer part is that it's just going to die to Orcish Bowmasters. I don't think you can afford to play 1/1s that like need to survive in order to produce value. Like Baleful Strix, at least it like draws the card. If your opponent orcs it, it's like, okay, this sucked, but at least I'm drawing my card. Likeness Looter isn't like that. Likeness Looter is just gonna die, and you're just gonna be sad. One toughness bros have it rough, yeah. But yeah, there's a version of the deck. I can't remember the name of the card, but it's blue and a black for like a 1/3 that surveils when it comes into play. And it's basically got this ability. But even though the loot effect is better than what that card's doing, the fact that it's a 1/3, I think just makes it better than this. The current meta. Lazav, thank you. Yeah, not the new Lazav. Cruel Somnophage. This is one that does not look very good on paper, but I think might have potential. Can't Wake Up is the adventure part. 1 in a blue, sorcery adventure. Target player mills 4 cards. So I can target either player. If you're self-milling for a Vengevine deck, or if you're milling trying to deck the opponent, that works. It's not a good rate. 2 mana to mill 4 is not a good rate. Ideally, you'd be spending 1 mana on that. Wake me up inside. Oh my god. Can't wake up, goofy voice. I've ruined my Twitch chat. I've ruined my Twitch chat talking about this card. Anyway, so the Can't Wake Up is much worse than a mill spell typically is, but it does become stapled to this cruel Somnophage, which has power and toughness equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So if you're playing in Modern and your opponent's killed your crabs, if you're milling them out in their creature deck, power and toughness might be pretty reasonable pretty quickly. It plays very poorly with the 2 and a black instant that exiles all the creature cards from your opponent's graveyard to gain 3 life for each, but most mill decks have stopped playing that in the main deck. I think where this card is more interesting, because again, like the slots are very competitive in Modern Mill these days. I think where this card gets more interesting is if you're trying to do self-mill stuff like Vengevine. 2 mana is not difficult in terms of triggering Vengevine. You can afford to play some 2-drops. And then the Can't Wake Up part is useful. Spend turn 2 casting that, turn 3 play this in a 1-drop, recur Vengevine, that sort of deal. And then it also might be useful in Pioneer. There's some Pioneer decks that care about self-milling. It'd be kind of nice to just have a creature stapled to self-mill card. You're thinking about Esper Greasefang? Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about... God, I can never remember a card name to save my life. The X-Delve spell that gets all the abilities for those cards. Does anyone remember the name of that one? I want to look that up, actually. Soulflare, yeah. Now, Soulflare, I believe, stipulates the abilities that it gets, right? Yeah, I can't just get any of them. It'd be wild if it could get the power and toughness swapper ability if you exiled this thing. But yeah, just casting Cruel Somnophage might be good in a Soulflare deck. And then the Soulflare exiles all your creatures and becomes small again. Remember, that doesn't work that well. But there's some ideas. Basically, anytime a card is actually 2 cards, I think it's interesting. Sometimes those cards end up being busted, right? Lodestone Golem. Kind of an innocuous thing. Was actually 2 cards stapled together and ended up getting restricted in Vintage real fast. Kellen the Fae-Blooded. I'm a little excited about this one. 2 and a red, legendary creature, human fairy, got double strike. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen the Fae-Blooded. It's a 2/2. The adventure part is Birthright Boon. So 1 and a white sorcery adventure. Search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, then shuffle. So in Pioneer and in Historic, you do have a Birthright Boon already. You have a 1 and a white card that can go and tutor up a aura or equipment. It's like the literal exact card, right? However, that card is not stapled to a creature. So I've tried making Hammer Time work in Pioneer. I've tried making it work in Historic, and it hasn't quite been there. And one of the issues is you have this inconsistency. You're trying to balance like cheat effects, things that can like cheat the hammer onto the creature. You need a critical mass of those, and then you need all the ways of finding the hammers and equipments themselves. And then you also need bodies, right? And it's very difficult to have the right number of all of those things to have a consistent deck and be doing things, well, not inconsistently. Kellen, even though the adventure card is like not that exciting, because again, we've had access to it, hasn't been that good. The fact that it's stapled to a creature that you can equip seems really good. So it's clunkier than Stoneforge Mystic, but it doesn't have to compete with Stoneforge Mystic. A clunkier Stoneforge Mystic seems really good in those formats. The fact that it has double strike too is not irrelevant, right? Like, it means that with a hammer on it, it just kills the opponent. Has Hammer Time historically liked to have blue as a secondary color? Not in the formats I'm talking about. Not in Pioneer, not in Historic. Usually it prefers Boros. You get more ways of cheating equipment onto things in Boros. It's a little bit better. Pitches to Fury. Yeah, that's a modern consideration for sure. You want to play this to get Curse of Misfortunes? Who hurt you? All right. Decadent Dragon is not a modern card, and it's not a legacy card. I just think it's neat. I'm probably going to be jamming this in cube. I think I'm going to put this card in my cube. So, Expensive Taste, 2 and a black, instant adventure. Exile the top 2 cards of target opponent's library face down. You may look at and play those cards. That's, like, not bad, right? A little divination, a little land drop in a thing. You don't have the selection of a Gonti trigger, but the body that this is attached to, the Decadent Dragon, 2 red for a 4/4 flying trample. It creates treasure on attacking. That's a little bit better than Gonti, right? And because it's split over 2 different things, there's a chance that like your mono black deck might want Expensive Taste, and there's a chance that your mono red deck might want Decadent Dragon. So you might end up like increasing the card pool for different decks, including these split cards. Better in formats where people play top deck tutors, right? Yeah, like being able to like counter a Vampiric Tutor with the Expensive Taste could be a pretty sick play. Made to steal Moxen? God, I hope so. You can play lands off it, yeah. Yeah, it's very close to an actual divination. You've been playing Siphon Insight and Legacy lately. It's been awful, so you have no idea how good this is. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a Legacy playable or Modern playable. But I think it might be sweet in cube. I also really like the art. It just appeals to me. Baseline stats are decent, yeah. Yeah, Wiley Becker really crushed it. It's very atmospheric, right? Like you got the mist, but you can still like see the background. The far background looks like a Calvin and Hobbes alien landscape, and then front ground you see all these like these ruins, the dragon like covered in this treasure, feeling all regal with all the gold in these broken statues and stuff. Really cool art. All right, and then the last thing I want to talk about are these creature lands. Some of them seem pretty good. To be honest, I have not read all of them. But Restless Spire only costing 2 mana to activate is a very low number. There was a time in Modern where people played creature lands, played the dual color creature lands. It's been a long time. It has been a while. But if any of these makes it, it has to be Restless Spire, right? Just by virtue of being activated for 2. Until end of turn, it becomes a 2/1 blue and red elemental creature with as long as it's your turn, this creature has first strike, it's still land, and whenever it attacks you, scry 1. It seems like to be a really good thing to be doing while you're flooding. You like the rock one? It dies to Bowmasters? It does die to Bowmasters, yeah. Restless Cottage, and it's battlefield tapped. Tap for a green or a black. 4 mana, becomes a 4/4 black and green horde creature token until end of turn, still land. Whenever it attacks, create a food token and exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. That art's really sweet. I think the art might be better than the card. All of these are probably cube playable, I don't know if they're gonna be better than the old creature lands in cubes. Like, I don't know if Restless Bivouac is better than the old 2/1 double striker, but it could be. It's cheaper to activate, right? 1 red, white, becomes a 2/2 red and white ox creature token, still land. Whenever it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. So it can just keep growing itself, like Raging Ravine does. Or you can, like, grow your flyers or what have you. Grow a lifelinker. Restless Fortress. Taps for white or black. 2 white-black. Becomes a 1/4 white and black nightmare creature until end of turn. When it attacks, defending player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. That's a really good drain. That's gotta be better than the old 2/3 lifelink, right? I guess this is way worse on defense. Like with this one, you almost like have to attack with it. The other one was pretty good at blocking. Worse at attacking walkers? Yeah, but a 2/3 also wasn't great at attacking walkers, right? Still a 1/4 blocker. That's a good point. Those are still good blocking stats. Just less punishing than lifelink. Restless Beanstalk. Who's battlefield tapped. Tap for a blue or green. 3 blue-green. God, that's so much mana. Until end of turn, it becomes a 5/5 green and blue plant creature token with trample, still land. Well, at least it gets trample. Whenever it attacks, up to 1 target creature has base power and toughness 3/3 until end of turn. Okay. So it can pump itself. Or you can even, like, attack into a 6/6 with this. I almost like Restless Beanstalk for cube. Tutor it up with the prime time. Attack into your opponent's Blightsteel Colossus or something. It says other. Yeah, it's not shrinking itself. Other creature for pump or shrinking. Right, I get that it shrinks the opponent's creature. Did I misspeak somehow that people... Did someone in chat say something? Yeah, I said it was attacking as a 5/5 into your opponent's 3/3. I misspoke? Oh, okay. I said it could pump itself. Yeah, it pumps itself into a 5/5. You pump other creatures that you're attacking with. I accept that I misspoke, but yeah. I know it was not self-targeting. It wouldn't even be a pump if it targeted itself, right? It'd be a shrink. Yeah, you attack your 5/5 into the opponent's 3/3. Like, however large their creature is. If they've got some, like, 10/10 Eldrazi, you can make it a 3/3 and trample over it. You pump yourself every night. That's not appropriate. An appropriate thing to say, Man. 2 mana for a 2/1's real bad when Treetop Village exists. Are you talking about Restless Spire? This is not just a 2 mana 2/1. Like, attacking and getting the Scry 1 is a big part of the card. For only 3 mana. So in Modern, people play the blue thing. The 2 blue tap to Scry 2. This is so much cheaper than that. And Scry 1 is not as good as Scry 2, but attacking with your 2/1 is also not nothing. Yeah, Castle Vantress. That's the exciting part. We're not talking about, like, stats being, like, the most impressive thing ever. And also, when you're comparing a creature dual land to Treetop Village, like, this is also fixing your mana, right? Whereas Treetop Village, you're replacing a forest with another card that just taps for green. Restless Spire is replacing a basic and improving your mana base while also giving you filtering and also giving you an attacker. It's doing a lot. It's doing a lot for very little. Scry 1 is not worth sacrificing a land. You're talking about your opponent killing your Restless Spire? Yeah, orcs being around is pretty awkward for Modern, for sure. For sure. In Cube, though. In Cube, I think Restless Spire looks really good. Like, clearly better than the 1/4 that could flip its power and toughness. I think Restless Cottage is a little clunky. I think these three like could be good in a specific cube, but they're going to be way too clunky for constructed. Or I shouldn't say constructed, because like maybe they show up in standard. Especially Restless Fortress getting to drain without even needing to connect is like kind of cool for standard. Like, they all might be good in standard for all I know. I haven't played standard in a while. I would assume that efficiently costed creature lands are still great. Get my fix in, get a free threat. Restless Spire was the only one that's like aggressively costed enough to really think about for like Vintage Cube and potentially Modern. But yeah, X1's in Modern right now. Not a good scene. Well, I'm out of cards. I'm out of cards that interested me. Does anyone else have a card that I didn't touch on, or a question, or anything like that? Now's a really good time to bring it up. Get more cards. I certainly didn't talk about every card in the set. Usually I do an exhaustive review where I go through every single card, which means that like 90% of the review is talking about limited. And then I get to those few cards that I think are interesting for constructed and go deep on them. This set review was only talking about the constructed things. The first Modern deck that I want to jam, I'm really high on food decks right now. There were a couple of cards that I looked at that I thought were interesting for food decks. Did I delete it? Or move it around? Yeah, here we are. This is a food deck in Modern that I haven't gotten a chance to test. And there were a couple of cards that I thought might be interesting. So I want to play this deck in Modern for multiple reasons. Does the black-white land get around the one ring protection? It does, yeah, it doesn't target. And it's loss of life, not damage. The Green-Black Adventure Knight. I have not talked about the Green-Black Adventure Knight. I think that card is good. I don't think it'll be good enough for Modern. And I'm uncertain about Pioneer and Historic. I'm a little bit less, like... So years ago, when I first got into Pioneer and Historic, I think it would have been like clearly exciting and good enough for the green-black aggro control decks, like Coco things that I was doing then. Those decks haven't really been playable in a while. So if there's a home for it in those formats, I'm just not really sure what it is. And that's why I didn't feature it. That's why I didn't give it an endorsement. It's good. It's got good stats, right? 1 in a green for a 3/2 Trampler. When it dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure. Then you have this adventure that's 2 mana to draw a card and you lose life. And then you can, of course, replay the green side and keep on attacking and such. So long as your deck can make green and black mana, you can just kind of play this card and grind value infinitely. Werefox Bodyguard. The issue with Werefox Bodyguard is that it's competing with better cards. It won't show up in Modern Legacy Death and Taxes, no. If only it's comes into playability with Split Up, huh? To take use of the bounce. Did I talk about the Prowess Otter? The Prowess Otter is a 1-mana 1/1, right? I know I was just talking about the blue-green creature land, but the Prowess Otter is just going to die to Bowmasters. I'm not a Prowess expert. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just very hesitant to play X1s in Modern right now. Maybe you played in Pioneer. I haven't played much Prowess in Pioneer. Mutagenic? I guess. Mutagenic's getting overworked. It's elusive? It is, yeah. The best art? I really like that dragon that we looked at. This Decadent dragon. That might be why I featured it. Devouring Sugar Maw is pretty good. Spike mentioned some 3/3/3/2 that makes a 1/1 rat when you sack a food. The uncommon? I saw that. I wasn't thinking about the Sam combo. This one's like almost interesting. I messed around with rats in Modern a bit. There's like the 1 black 3/3. Like you impulse for the for the top 5 cards of your library and put all the rats in your hand. Messed around with that for a little bit, and so I thought about Tangled Colony as like something actually kind of playable. Attack into your opponent's giant creature, and they block, you get a bunch of rats. They kind of just have to take damage. And it's a 3/2, you know, it's not just dying to Red and 6 or whatever. It does kind of remind me of Hornet's Nest. Yeah, that's part of the appeal. I saw Doom talking about Rankle's Prank in pre-modern, or Pioneer. In Pioneer, there's a discard deck that it's probably going to fit in. I'm not that familiar with the deck, though. So this one... Yeah, this one doesn't have anything to do with food. Maybe I should be searching for rats or something. Yeah, I'm not sure what card you're talking about in terms of a rat that's coming with food. It might be Bimp. The whole set could be a con to get me brewing around rats again. A 3-mana uncommon. I mean, there's this one, but it's when it enters the battlefield. Choose one. It's only once. It's Experimental Confectioner. Is it not a black card? It should have been there. That might explain why I missed it. Maybe it's a... It's a human. This is a cool card. Yeah, I wonder why that was well, it wasn't in the thing. Oh, the Jumpstart card. Yeah, that must be why I missed it. Well, my bad. I'm glad I opened things up to questions. 2 and a black for a 2/3 human peasant. When it enters the battlefield, create a food token. Don't hate that. And then whenever you sack a food, create a 1/1 black rat creature token. Yeah, that does kind of pop off with Sam Hum. The format legality of Jumpstart. Everything it looks like. They're just going to be in set boosters anyway. Okay, but it's still separated on Scryfall for some reason. Infinite Draw and Rats with Peregrine Took. Peregrine Took, not Sam. Those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. So this comes in, you create a food, Peregrine gives you an extra additional food. If you can sack one, you get a 1/1 rat. And 1/1 rat gets you an additional food. I guess these two by themselves are not... If you have 3. Yeah, if you have 3 food, then it goes infinite, Tom. Because you're sacrificing all 3 at once. And this just replaces it. It doesn't seem that hard to have 3 food. Especially with the same decks just like spitting a bunch of food into play. Bulgari cookbook with Coco. Yeah. I mean, like, there's already Sam combo that's like already going heavy on food. I assume this just like slots right into it, huh? Have a huge army of rats. Yeah. Like you could play a Yogg in this shell. You wouldn't need even 4 of them. Just like have a single one to tutor up. And then that gives you something to do with the rats too, if you don't have a Peregrine in play. Yeah, the lore on that is interesting, huh? You have an experimental confectionery, you just have this, like, peasant making a cake. And then, like, a halfling. And then all of a sudden you have infinite rats and infinite cards. You have a combination more powerful than the One Ring itself. Cool. Thanks for putting that out, folks. Well, something that I had missed. Ratatouille the card, yeah, right? All right. Once again, big shout out to Wizards. Hashtag MTG Ambassador. Thanks to them for sending me some Eldraine product, which I've not opened yet. I don't know if that's gonna get opened on stream or not. But now I have the option, I have the ability. If you missed any part of the stream, if you missed me talking about Beseech the Mirror, I think we spent the most time on Beseech the Mirror in Modern and Legacy. That's probably the standout. Beseech the Mirror, by the way, is also going to be going into my my powered cube. I think if your cube supports Black Storm and you've got like all the regular artifacts, I think Beseech the Mirror is really, really good. Not Demonic Tutor good, but, you know, better than a lot of the next options. I think it's better than, like, Imperial Seal, for example. Card is indeed really powerful, yeah. All right, and now I think we'll be switching over to some Cube, huh? Might as well jam some more Cube while it's still up. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and yeah. This will be going up on the YouTube. You can pre-order. You can pre-order this set. Remember, the pre-orders are open. Yeah, again, Basic Swamps. We spent like 20 minutes on it. Like 5 of these tabs are devoted to Beseech the Mirror. All right. I'm gonna restart the stream, but it'll be back up real quick, like.